Hello and welcome back to my studio. Today I'm going to be painting a pheasant portrait on a 12 by 12 inch canvas panel in acrylics. And this painting is going to basically involve abstract, impressionism and realist styles. So lots to look out for, lots of techniques, and I hope you enjoy it. Now let's get painting. So the first thing I'm going to do is give the canvas a coat of acrylic gloss medium. It can be gloss or matte, it doesn't matter. The entire canvas is covered, and then while it's wet, I give it a coat of burnt sienna as an imprimatura. This creates a lovely warm background to paint onto, and is much better than painting onto a white canvas. Always try and paint on a stained background whenever possible. Now I'm going to put in some of these little dark details with this little brush here. I'll only use a little brush around certain areas, and the face is one of them. Most of the rest of the painting is done with large brushes, but I want the face to be quite relatively detailed. So I'm just going to put in some of the outlines as well now, so that I don't lose them as I paint over them and around them. So just knock in rough shapes of the outline of the bird and the legs. The legs are important. The stance means everything. It shows what the bird is about to do. That's the basic shape put in. Now with a large brush, this is a large 1-inch bristle flat brush, and Payne's grey and white and a tiny touch of cadmium yellow to create a little subtle green colour, which I can make darker or lighter using those 3 colours. And that's going to be the background, which is going to be really quite impressionistic, and in some cases, in some places, very abstract. So you can see you can do quite an awful lot with a large brush, and the basic large areas should always be done with a large brush in the beginning. And depending on how far you want to take the painting, to what level of detail, you should always start with a large brush. If you're not yet into doing that, I suggest you try as hard as possible just to start with a large brush, and in fact you can try doing an entire painting with one large brush. I do have some videos where I've shown how to do that. So I'm going to put in a shadow area underneath the bird to show that it is standing on this foliage. It's not just floating in midair. And I'll apply some of those darks here and there and elsewhere, and then a few neutral greys put in. And I just keep going over this until I'm happy enough with that result. And while the paint's wet, in that bottom left hand corner, I'll scratch my name as I usually do, like so. Now putting the bird's colouring in, the body of the pheasant is quite orangey yellow here, and then it subtly blends into a dark red, an almost black area. So I'll put the red in. It's like a claret colour. And then a bit of Payne's grey added to that to create the darkness I require. And I can go into that once it's dry and do different types of darks within it. But I just need to get the overall form correct here. So it's going to be dark on that edge. Put the tail in, and then some of the back and the wings. And the wings have a very light bluey grey colour to them here and there. So I will put a few of those colours in to start with. This is just the base tone, remember, of the entire bird. just putting the base colours in. Now I'm going to scratch through some of that wet paint with a fork or any other scratching tool, just to basically roughen it up and loosen it up and make it a little bit more abstract. Some of those marks will show through as I do the layers on the top, and some won't. Some will be almost visible and be very subtle. So I want to put the red in now around the eye on the face. This is quite bright area of red, and I'll go over it again with another layer later on just to really brighten that up. But I'm also going to add that red into areas of the landscape and then scratch it through here and there. And that harmonizes the overall painting. Little bits of red are put elsewhere. Any colour that I'm using, I will apply elsewhere in the painting to create that harmony. It doesn't have to be just the red, it's all the colours, to create an overall harmony. So nothing is too garish or leaps out at you. So really that's quite abstract background. Now, put in a few more darks there. And the blends into the foliage there, a few more reds in there, and a few like tree trunk type of suggestions. Now with my silicon painting tool, scraper, I'm just going to move the paint around while it's wet. And it slides over this paint and around this paint beautifully and can move it around wherever you want it to go. And if it doesn't move around, just give it a little spray of water on the canvas and you'll find it will. It will work better. And I'll scratch into some of that as well once I'm happy with what I've done there. Again, some more scratches. And then I'll start applying another layer over this foreground to make that bird really stand out. And I'll scratch through some of these as well. And what you have to remember is when you're scratching through a second layer, you're not scratching through to the white canvas beneath. You're scratching through to the other colour layer beneath it. So it's a lot more subtle. So I'm just putting some basic colours into this bird here. Now this is a very bright orangey area that has a subtle blend from light to dark. And this gives you basically the shape of the bird. So I'll put in these basic colours around there and some darks and roughly blend them. So you can do a little bit of detail as well with this fan brush. It's a bristle fan brush. So once I've got those in there, I need to go a little bit darker there. Get that edge of the bird really quite dark. It's in very deep shadow. And then I'll use my finger to blend it. If I want a nice smooth blend, I can use my finger. When I don't want a smooth blend, then just do it with brushes. So you see scratching through, once again, they're not quite as obvious, those marks now. Now I'm going to put in the darks of the bird's head and neck again, this time going a little bit more darker and denser with the colour. Now that really stands out against that background. Like that. Now this is a little flat bristle brush. I'm just putting one or two of these marks in, again putting harmonious colours in and scratching through. We're going to put the trees back in again, just, well, there's suggestions of trees, they're not actual trees. But I'm going to put one on the other side as well, I think. Some below the tail there. Yeah, I'll put one on here, on this side. And I'm going to put some foliage in as well with the same brush, just to show you that you can use a brush in different ways. You saw me just doing lines with it. Now I'm doing foliage. It's amazing what you can do with one brush. I can also blend with it as well. A bit dark there, so I'll lighten that up and blend it in. And put some little highlights of background and some warmths now into this foreground, which I'll put in with oranges, and then I'll scratch those through as well, and that softens them, takes them more into the painting and not so obvious. Now, sort of fine-tuning this dark area, this shadow area now. Get that red in there and then blend with my finger, because I want that to be just right, because I'm going to be putting a lot of little detailed markings over the top of that shortly, and so I know that that has to be right before I do that, because I can't adjust it once the markings are done, because there's too many of them. Or there will be. So putting in some of these little light areas on the back of the bird and where the tail joins the body, and a few little light areas there into the tail. You can see I use my fingers a lot when I'm painting. It should be second nature for you, really, to use your fingers. They were the first painting tool, after all. So I'm now putting in these lines of where the wing feathers are, and there's a lot of bluey greys in there, and little highlights here and there. Put in the details on the actual beak and the right shape. This has got to be accurate. Anything around the face has to be very accurate. I'm just going to highlight the area around the head again, just to make it stand out, and blend it with my finger there. Do a similar thing over here and put in some more background lights, just with this little brush. It's an old worn brush. Like that. Now I can put in these little markings, of which there's going to be a lot. Now these are little dark markings that a pheasant has on its belly and chest. And they have a size, a specific size and direction. They change direction, these little markings. So I'm just going to go to a different brush here. I'm going to go to a dagger brush now, because this can produce a variety of different sized markings, which is much more useful at this stage, because there's got to be a lot of little markings here where they've changed direction because the bird is turning its head. So those markings will change direction. And I'll put some of these darker areas into the darks as well, because that dark isn't completely black. But if I put some really dark markings in, they're almost visible, subtle. And then I'll make the edges a bit more ragged to show that they're feathers. And put in this little colour area on the neck, which is and I'll put a purplish tone here as well. Make those highlights a little bit better on the bluey highlights on the wings, and I'm also going to add them into the background, into the rest of the painting, which I will again go through with the fork just to take them down. Now I'm going to highlight the edge of the beak, and this has to be 100% correct, the shape. A pheasant's beak is very distinctive, and it has to look correct. So that's the only time I will use a detail brush, a very fine brush, is to do very fine details like that in the eye and the face area. Putting those reds back in again, even brighter, and I'll add them once again into that background and scratch them through. Now a few little highlights with the dagger brush here and there to show the light is glinting off the top edge of that bird and also on the little white markings that it has on its back. Like that. And then coming down into the base of the tail. A few little highlights on the wing tips and the rest of the wings, just here and there, just to give the suggestion of detail without actually being detail. And then I'm going to put the white collar in now. So really bright white light there, and then I'm going to put a slightly more dull tone here, because that's slightly more in shadow. And I'll put in some greeny blues now into this colour on the back of the neck, because it's a very colourful bird, especially in this particular area on its neck. And highlight once again that beak, because the white will sink in, so I'll make it brighter. I'll put also a little dot in the eye there, just to give it a little bit of realism. And a little highlight on the top edge of the head there, on that little crest or ears. So some more little highlights, and also some highlights in the warmer areas, which I will scratch just to give them a rough feel, a rough look, not feel. It's not about the texture, it's about the look. Some reds in there as well. Scratch them into it. Yeah, when I'm doing the scratching technique, it isn't about the texture, although that can have an effect depending on the thickness of the paint. It's more about the mark making itself. Okay, now going in with another bright layer onto this foreground foliage, which I will scratch. And it gives it that lovely random nature, that random look, which I love. A few little yellowish markings now, just added into that paint, yellow tone. Scratched in. And they don't come quite so blatant. Now with the dagger brush, I'm just putting one or two little grasses in here and there as suggestions of grasses. And a few little marks to make it look like little buds and flower heads and leaves. All just randomly done. I'm not doing them detailed. It's to give the suggestion of grasses. Like that. A few little dark areas in that tail area. Now I'm going to use this little brush now just to put one or two little marks, little grass-like strokes in there, using a variety of different colours, darks and lights. Lights against darks, darks against lights. That should be the rule. A few more little highlights. Once again, those whites. And then I'm going to, with this medium sort of size brush, an old worn one, I'm going to splatter technique. You see, I'm just picking up some of the cream paint and splattering it. Now I'll do the same with pure white. And once I've done that, that's the painting finished. Well, I hope you enjoyed watching this video and hopefully found it rewarding and entertaining. Let me know if you have any comments or questions that I may be able to help you with. And I look forward to you joining me on my next painting video. So until then, have a lovely day and happy painting!